but it is noon. And so I will kick off our meeting by welcoming all of you to this meeting of the full task force for racial equity and criminal justice. Thank you all for making time today. And as we get started, I just want to share, I've been thinking a lot about our work over the past 5 months as we are concluding one stage and getting ready to start the next stage. And 3 things strike me about what we've done so far that I think have been particularly powerful. So I just wanted to share those with you as we think about where we are at this point. One very important strength of our work is we've been looking at the system as a whole. We've been divided up into different work groups, but as we come together as a task force and as we present this report, I think it's very powerful that this is a report about the criminal justice system sort of from beginning to end, from everything that gets people into the system to all of the consequences, everything that happens to them while they're in the system, and all the consequences that flow for the rest of people's lives. So I think that's a very powerful aspect of what we've been doing. Second thing that struck me is the way in which we've been learning. I'm just enormously grateful to all the work that the staff has done and all the work that task force members have done to identify people who have useful information. I've learned a tremendous amount that I didn't know, and I think we all have, and I think that's been incredibly valuable and a real strength of our work. And the third thing I want to highlight is we've been listening. We've been listening to multiple stakeholders with an open mind and with goodwill, which isn't to say we always have agreed or had the same perspective, but we have listened to each other. So with those strengths, I think they will all stand us in good stead as we move forward. And with that, I want to turn over to my co-chair, Attorney General Stein, to see if you have any opening or welcoming comments.
Thank you, Justice Earls. And I'll be very brief because I see Governor Cooper has joined us this morning. We are at an important moment in our process. This is a landmark because we will be voting on our set of recommendations to give to the governor in the next 2 weeks or next week at this point. But this is not the final culmination of our work because frankly, this work never ends. The pursuit of justice in whatever arena, whether it's criminal justice as our charge is, that work never ends because we can always do better. I want to thank every single person on the task force. I want to thank every single person who has supported the task force, our leads, all the support staff for the working groups. We have met 61 times. This is our 8th task force meeting. We had 6 regional roundtables. We had 3 public sessions, and we had 44 working group meetings. Just a tremendous amount of energy, effort, and commitment on the part of you as task force members and all the staff who have supported us these past 5 months. It's been incredible. And just as Justice Earl said, it has been challenging work, but really important work. And we've worked together with respect and collegiality, even when we differed. And I'm confident that the product that we finally adopt will have make a meaningful difference in our criminal justice system. And thank you all for all that you've done. Justice Earl.
Thank you. Well, with that, I will turn it over to Governor Cooper. Thank you so much for being with us today, and we're eager to hear what you have to share with us.
Well, thank you very much, Justice Earls, and am grateful to you and General Stein for your leadership. I also want to thank all of the members of the Task Force on Racial Equity and Criminal Justice, along with the staff members. I know that this has been a difficult and arduous process, particularly in the middle of a pandemic. I'm about to announce this afternoon some additional steps that the state is going to take in order to slow the spread of COVID. And for all of you as leaders in this state and in various communities across North Carolina, help us to heed these warnings and to set a good example to people about taking personal responsibility, wearing masks, social distancing, doing the things that you need to do to keep others safe as well as yourself. One of the things this pandemic has done is shined a light on inequities that we know are already there, but this pandemic, although it has hit all parts of North Carolina, it has had a disparate impact on communities of color. And I was grateful to get recommendations from the Andrea Harris task force that I also appointed along with this task force to help us address systemic racism and racial inequities across the board. But I know that in this area, it is particularly difficult to have conversations. They can often be tough. I know that this appointment of this task force was spurred on by the tragic death of George Floyd and others, but I think we have known that reforms had been needed for quite a while, and I think that it is positive that so many people have come together, even with differing points of view. I'm grateful for the important negotiations and consensus for the most part that has been achieved. I have previewed some of the recommendations. I've seen many thoughtful, impactful proposals, and I look forward to receiving the full report from you when you have it. I know you've spent a lot of time in subcommittee meetings and in task force meetings. 61 comings together is remarkable, particularly during a pandemic, and dealing with the difficult subject matter that you have. I commend all of you, but I'll have to tell you, the work now really begins. You have done a lot and have set a table for us to begin this process. And I want you to know that I am committed to working with this task force, also with the General Assembly, with the judicial branch, with local governments, with law enforcement, with advocacy groups. I think all of them are going to have to play a role for us to turn proposals into real policy. And that is a difficult road ahead, but it is one that I think that this task force has helped us think through and puts us in a good position to do that. I also think that in the area of criminal justice, we have been seeing over the last few years real bipartisan moments, times where we have brought people together for good policy. The Second Chance Act that I signed not too long ago was a good example of that. And I'm encouraging everyone to look at these serious proposals so that we can come together and put them into action. Thanks again for the hard work that you have done. I know the people of North Carolina appreciate it. And I look forward to working with you for a more equitable, fairer justice system in our state and to tackle this head on. Justice Earls and General Stein, thank you. And thank you to all of the task force members for your great work. And I'm going to head over to the Emergency Operations Center.
Right.
Thank
you, Governor Cooper. I know I speak for everyone when I say we appreciate your wisdom and leadership in giving us this opportunity to focus on racial equity. So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
So that brings us to the next step in our agenda, which is before we vote on the final draft report that all of you have previously had a chance to review, in that process of reviewing it, there was one change. We incorporated the comments that we received, but there was one change that seemed substantive, and so we want to bring forward a proposed amendment to the draft that you saw, that for everyone to consider, because we didn't feel that this was a change we could make sort of on our own, that this was something that we wanted to make sure everyone was clear about. An important provision that's coming from a recommendation from Working Group 4. So what you see now on your screen is the proposed change. And again, this is a change to what you saw in the most recent draft of the final report that was circulated for your review and comment. So this is a proposal that was voted on using our voting process, but we now want to amend the language of that change because we feel that the actual language may not have reflected what the working group intended, and it may not have appropriately reflected what we thought we were voting on at the time we voted. So that's my quick summary, but I do want to turn this over to Mary to give us a chance, give us a little bit more detail of what this change is and why the amendment's being proposed.
Thank you, Justice Earls. So yeah, we in our working group, we made this recommendation and we presented it to you all and we voted on it, and it has to do substantively with changing the portion of the motion for appropriate relief statute that governs procedural default to allow a judge more latitude to grant relief in situations where perhaps a defendant hadn't timely filed or timely raised a claim. When I reviewed the final draft of our report last week, it occurred to me that the way we had described this, even though we did cite to the procedural default statute, it wasn't really that clear for maybe lay people who were reading the report or to lawyers who might not want to go read the statute, that this proposed motion, that this proposed change related only to the procedural default portion of the motion for appropriate relief statute. Somebody coming to the court with a motion for appropriate relief would still have to have substantive grounds for that motion. But pursuant to our change, if the judge thought the interest of justice required it, or if the petition raised a significant claim of race discrimination, the judge could then waive any procedural default. So it's kind of technical, but I felt like it was important to be a little bit more precise in our wording in a document that's going to be widely circulated and read by folks who don't necessarily get into the weeds of the general statute. So it doesn't really change, this amendment doesn't really change the nature of what we proposed. And in fact, we had talked about in our working group broader changes to the motion for appropriate relief statute. But what we ended up bringing to you was, for example, the second Look Act and some other recommendations. So this is a narrow change. I think it needs to be more precisely described in the final report. So that's, you see the amendment on the screen. Amend motion for appropriate relief statute to allow a judge to overcome technical defects in the interest of justice or where the petition raises a significant claim of race discrimination. And then the statutory site has been changed. It should have been 15A 1419 all along. And we took out V2 because somebody pointed out that if we amend one portion of 1419, we might, some of that might become surplusage, and we should just leave all that to the smart people in the legislature who draft bills. So that's my amendment, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yes, thank you, Mary. Does anyone have either questions about what this does or why it's needed, or comments or reactions? Please just unmute yourself and start talking if you do, because I'm not confident I'm seeing everyone. So if you raise your hand, I may not be seeing it. Okay, I'm not hearing any questions.
Justice Earls?
Yes.
This is Jasmine. I just wanted to, it was kind of hard to see this because of the way it had to be described on the slide, but the quotes are also being removed. Is that right, Mary? Here.
That's correct. The quotation marks, those are left over from the way the recommendation was originally worded, but we're tightening it up and fixing the grammar and taking out the quotes, and it'll all be good, I think.
Any other comments, discussion?
Justice Earls, a question, please.
Yes. Please, go ahead.
Thank you for this amendment, and I think it narrows the MAR a little bit. So if a technical defect would be that no objection was made during the trial, would that be considered technical defect that now a judge could entertain this MAR?
Yeah, that's usually when we see people assert, or the state assert, the defense of procedural default is if something could have been objected to at trial, or could have been raised on direct appeal, or could have been raised in an earlier MAR. So that's exactly the sort of thing we're going to eliminate in the interest of justice, or we would propose to eliminate in the interest of justice, or if the petition raises a significant claim of race discrimination.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, then we are going to vote on adopting this amendment, and we're going to do that by poll, the way we've voted on all of the recommendations. So if you could put up the poll for everyone to vote on whether to adopt this amendment.
It looks like everyone has voted. If anyone is still voting, raise your hand and I will wait. Okay, great.
Okay, because it's not visible to everyone, I'll report that this passed overwhelmingly, not unanimous, but overwhelmingly 95% supported the amendment. So that will be, that amendment will appear in the final published version of the report, and that brings us to our vote on the final report. We're going to do this by voice vote unless someone objects. If you do object, let me know right now, because we have to set something up to do it differently. But it'll just require everyone to unmute. And we wanted to be clear about what your vote actually means, because we know that this has been this has been a long process. Not everyone voted in favor of every recommendation. Not every recommendation went as far as everyone might have wanted it to. So we put in writing our understanding of what we will be representing to the world your vote means. It doesn't signify your personal endorsement of each and every recommendation. It doesn't mean you think that it goes far enough, or you might think some go too far. What it does mean, a yes vote means you agree that this report as a full body of work is a strong, meaningful, and evidence-based set of recommendations, that it'll be useful to us as a first step towards achieving the task force's ultimate goal of reducing the racial disparities that exist in our criminal justice system. We know that implementation of these recommendations is going to be challenging, that there will be continued interaction. We've done a lot of touching base with the groups in the executive order that the governor directed us to touch base with. They've had input. We've made changes based on that input. We've had considerable input from the public, but that process will continue. And so we understand that there may be modifications to what we're recommending. But the vote today is a starting point for the next stage of our work. It allows us to speak about the future that we envision for the criminal justice system, and what we think it might take to make that system one that treats people equally, with dignity, regardless of their race or ethnicity. So with that, I'm gonna, unless anyone has any other questions about the vote on the full report, or questions about the report, I would propose that we now vote. So first of all, raise your hand if you have a question. Okay, I don't see any hands, so please everyone unmute yourselves. should be in the lower left hand of your screens. Okay, it appears to me that all task force members are unmuted. So all those in favor of adopting this final report as a report of the Task Force for Racial Equity and Criminal Justice, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the ayes have it, and we have adopted this report, which will be formatted. You will see the final version is different from the review version, and just in terms of formatting. But at this point, I'm going to turn it over to our facilitators to give us a chance to share some important reflections before we begin the next stage of our work.
Good
So
afternoon,
either-
everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi. So it's very exciting. It seems that this leg of the journey is complete, but as Justice Earls reminded us at the beginning, that this is a leg of the journey. And so if we think back to where we were in July and how far we've come, we wanted to provide some space for folks to reflect on some things that they are taking away from the experience, things they're taking back to their communities, to their circles of influence, how they're carrying the message of the report. And what are some things that you all hope for the next phase of things? As Justice Earl says, this is a beginning. And for many of us, it's been a period of transition towards a transformation, not just in the criminal justice system, but in our communities, in our state, and how we think about what it means to seek justice for all. So I'll open it up to members of the task force to share some things that they're taking away from the experience, the journey so far, what they hope to take back to their communities, their circles of influence, and some hope for the future in the next phase of the work to come.
One of the things that I take away is what the governor gave at the very beginning, and that was that a white Southern governor could say Black Lives Matter and say it with passion and follow through with the appointment of this task force. And I thought the task force and the working group committed more hours and more time and more energy than I ever thought was being asked of us, or that I was capable of contributing. And I think most of our members feel the same way. I thought we took on a couple of big challenges that are not complete, but exploring what it means to reimagine justice, to move away from punishment and retribution as the organizing principles and look towards redemption and restoration is important. And I think some of our work helps, is spade work. It lifts some of that up to identify some of the extreme sentences, juvenile life, violent habitual felon, death penalty, and their legacies to periods of enslavement, Black codes, and Jim Crow are important things. And I among the recommendations I'm excited about is the truth and reconciliation process. And I think what we've done here is a good beginning of a public discussion, a public education process that I think the state will be proud of, and we'll move it forward.
Thank you, Henderson.
Thank you, Henderson. He was a great committee leader, and I want to thank him for his leadership. But as I move around our community and just listen, it strikes me that a number of these issues have broad support from many sectors of our community. And so I'm hopeful that we can make some progress. Some of them are administrative, some of them we can do within our court system, some will require legislative attention. But I'm cautiously optimistic. And I would just say that, those of us who are in the criminal justice system on a daily basis need to be reminded to take the posture of humility, not of defensiveness, as members of the criminal justice system, that we've got a long way to go, and we need the more information we have, the better. We're asking for a lot more data and a lot more information, and we need to receive that and act upon it. And just the posture of humility is critical if we're going to make progress. So thank you.
I'd like to echo that and also reflect on Michael's comment of a journey. And it has been an interesting journey. One that I know, I think most of us, when we started, we really didn't know where we were going. Even though we might have some ideas of the goal, we really didn't know how we were going to get there. I have learned a lot. I appreciate all the different perspectives that have been shared, and things that I think I know about and things I don't know about. I learned a lot about the court system and about the interaction of the laws and what can and can't be done that I had not known before. And of course, all that starts generally with a law enforcement encounter. We know there are things that are low-hanging fruit that we addressed early on, and there are other things that will take some time to implement and to change minds. But I think if we look beyond the job we have, the role we have, the persona we have, the experiences that we've had, I think we've come together with like mind and like goals, and that we all want to see people treated fairly and equitably, and that we enhance public safety in our communities, because ultimately that's what this is about, that people can live peaceably, have good quality of life, take advantage of all the opportunities that everyone should be afforded. And I think we share that goal. And then when we put back on our roles and our responsibilities, I think now we see we have a part in making that happen. And how that goes, I think we have different opinions, which is fine. But our opinions are driven by our perspectives and our experiences, and they're all different. And when we recognize that and bring all that to the table, the conversations have been very robust. The leadership has been very robust, not only overall, but in our work group as well. And while I can't say I agree with every aspect of every recommendation, I can support the overall work product of the task force. And Justice Earls, thank you for explaining what a yes means, because I think that's very important, that we're not all going to agree with all these nuances, but we agree with the goal, and there are many roads to get to that destination, and we all will get there one way or another. And that the task force has come so far so quickly, yet so determinedly, is I think a plus to everyone involved, and I think ultimately will serve our state and our citizens much better as the years go on, and as some of these, most of these, maybe all of these come to fruition. So thank you all for widening my perspective and my horizons by your input.
I'll just jump in and say, kind of echo some of what the chief had just stated, and the judge as well. When I reflect back, one of the things I kind of continue to come back to is education. The education that I received as being a part of this task force, the education that I was able to pass on to folks in my line of profession as a result of being on a member of this task force, and then the education that I was able to provide as well as being a member of this task force. And our work group had some very spirited discussions as it related to the use of force. And I learned as much as I think I taught. And I really appreciate the fact that there were so many different perspectives. A number of times you spend your days doing the same thing over and over and over again. You kind of sometimes will begin to believe that, number one, that's the best way to do it, and number two, it's the only way to do it. And it serves us all well to get out and get some different perspectives and to see how our opinions and the way we go about doing this job affects each and every person. And if you had told me in the beginning of this that I'd be in support of a recommendation to decriminalize any drug usage or drug participation, I'd have told you were crazy. But as a matter of education, I have changed some of that perspective. And so I appreciate that fact. I only wish we had the opportunity to have got together at least once in person, because I'm a hugger by nature, so I like to shake hands and hug folks. But I really appreciate the opportunity to be educated and to pass on education. And I look forward to continuing this work. So I guess that's my pitch to say if there's a part 2 of this, I'd like to be added.
Michael, can I jump in? Well, we certainly don't want to try to dominate the discussion from Work Group 2, but you've heard from at least 2 of the individuals from Work Group 2, and that's reflective of all of the energy from members of Work Group 2 and throughout this entire task force. I'm extremely grateful for the leadership of the governor establishing this task force and the great leadership that we've had from Justice Earls and A.G. Stein in pulling this all together. Throughout my over 3 decades in the executive branch and also being in courthouses all across North Carolina, I've had a lot of great experiences. This process itself gave me even a greater appreciation of our partners who undertake the legislative role too, for us coming together and talking things out, hopefully reaching positive compromise too as well. And throughout my entire career, you know, I was trying to reflect on where this task force ranks. And I would say that just within the last couple of years, this ranks extremely high, along with the working group task force that was a pleasure to work with Mary Pollard and consult with Tara Callahan and many others on for tracking sexual assault kits in North Carolina. This work creates some synergy and it creates forward movement. It's not just to create a document to sit on the shelf, as the Attorney General has certainly warned us against having it being and has forecast. And I know that I don't try to speak for the governor, but I know that he will embrace and give thoughtful consideration to these recommendations coming forward. It's been an honor. It's been a pleasure working with you cooperatively, even arguing, because through that iron sharpens iron, we have created a new pathway forward in North Carolina. Here I still stand as a proud Black man in North Carolina, and here I still stand believing that law enforcement and those who serve in public service are still noble professions. And I don't make binary choices of this or the other, because what I have found throughout the course of my career, and certainly have reaffirmed, is that often the wisdom is coming together and really listening to each other, those informed perspectives. I've learned so much from the perspectives of Henderson and Judge Morey. I still call her Judge. I know she goes by Representative as well. And all of those, and those perspectives have been value added, not only to me as an individual who's charged with carrying out the executive branch focus, but where I could lend my voice and my ear to policy to inform and hopefully sustain a greater North Carolina. And that's it for me. Thank you, sir.
So I'll jump in for a moment. It's hard to follow a good Cumberland County man like Secretary Hooks. But I think that for me, it's been a tremendous experience to work in the midst of all of you professionals. You know, local government, oftentimes we're on the front line between the community and whatever the rules are. Work Group 1 with law enforcement management, I was really honored to have a team that consisted of Chief Davis from Sheriff Ingram, who gave a professional law enforcement perspective, Representative Gallard, lawmaker, legislator, just to use those diverse opinions that come with recommendations to present to this body, which was another group of diverse opinions, has served me well. And I have always portrayed with confidence that there's really very little daylight between the community and the law enforcement community. But I can say it now proudly that really overwhelmingly the law enforcement desires to be a part of the communities that they serve and that they police and protect. And so I've learned more of that today, and how Chief Davis and Sheriff Ingram have just shared from their points of view a lot of things and a lot of the changes that we need to make to the system. But they said that we're ready, willing, and able to enforce whatever the rules are. And that shows the professionalism of what you all do every day. And so I've learned a lot from that. I've learned a lot of Mr. Henderson Hill and how he adds a different perspective. And all of you individually, I can say so much. So it's been an honor to serve with you. So I look forward to continuing. So I'll make my shameless plug like Brother Garton also. Thank you.
I know y'all need to hear more from Working Group 2. So wanted to say that this has been a real glimmer of hope in a year that's been filled with despair and death and just some real wounds that are part of our society, particularly with race and with COVID. And I'm excited about the recommendations. I also come from the world of mental health and developmental disabilities, where there are lots of task force, lots of recommendations. And the reality is that making recommendations and really having these difficult conversations is so critical. But I want us to keep meeting. I want us to see these recommendations happen. For me, some of the most important recommendations were around keeping children in school and out of the criminal justice system. And if we're going to do that in a way that's really going to be successful, we've only made beginning steps. We've asked for some really significant data. I'm not convinced yet we're going to get that data and on the website and see it for every school unless we bird dog it and really work on it to make sure that it happens. And same with conversations, difficult conversations. In the mental health and developmental disability world, we thought it was a good idea in the 1800s to put people in institutions and leave them there. We thought it was a good idea in the 1930s to sterilize people because they had disabilities, usually people who were people of color in our country. And our criminal justice system was built over many, many years with really good people and people who also had different intentions than we would have now. And just like the mental health and developmental disability, it's a system that has been built so deeply over time and that we are so connected to in so many different ways that to change it is going to take more than a 4-month set of recommendations. And so I'm really looking forward to more meetings, more difficult discussions, and really figuring out a communication campaign, a policy campaign, a way to really, and even just conversations with local communities, difficult conversations for us to be able to see this through. Thanks.
Representative Moore.
Oh, okay. First of all, this has been an extraordinary experience, and to co-chair chair the work group 3, Commissioner Smith, DA Woodall, Tara Callahan, Senator Mohammed. We've had an extraordinary group and worked well together. I just appreciate so much of this is personal because I have gone through these months listening to the recommendations almost with a sense of shame because I was a judge for 18 years. And when I would routinely set bail on a class 3 misdemeanor, or when I would see a 7-year-old sit in juvenile court, not understanding what was going on, or we would criminalize homelessness and poverty. I look back and wish how many things I wish I could have changed. And this is a blueprint to do that. This is a blueprint to really, what will be the biggest bang for our buck? And it is, let's look at our bail system. Let's have the presumption of innocence. Let's look at ability to pay when we assess fines and fees. Let's look at reclassifying some of our minor offenses to infractions and not criminalize things. And yes, this can affect, and the data shows racial inequities, but the data represents people. And this can impact tens of thousands of people every year. So I just want to say I am very hopeful. I will take this to my colleagues, which will be a challenge, but this isn't partisan. This is what I keep looking back, and I really applaud Justice Earls and Attorney General Stein, this letter, the introduction to Governor Cooper, and the very last sentence, that this report marks the newest stage of an ongoing effort to advance racial equity in our criminal justice system, so North Carolina can live up to its highest ideals of equal justice for all. So thank you, and thank you everyone for all the work we've put in. It's a great report. I appreciate it.
And if I could just briefly say as well, that it's been an honor serving, and under work group for the leadership of Henderson, you all were amazing. I've learned so much, and I too am optimistic about and excited about being part of the change and just the potential for positive impact for the future. So I just want to say thank you for this opportunity, and I'm looking forward about just for the future and about the possibilities for the work that we're part of. So thank you.
I just want to say thank you to all the task force members. This was no easy feat. There were a lot of hours of dedication that was put into it. There were a lot of spirited conversations, and I really appreciate that the task force members, all of us, in fact, I would like to think that the spirited conversations are an indication of our commitment of wanting to do something different and wanting to, and I also feel like it speaks to our passion of our commitment to completing our responsibilities that were given to us. I also want to say that we haven't gone far enough, and that we could have possibly met for another 2 years. And my hope is that we don't stop now. I think we've just started scratching the surface. I think that there is a lot of momentum and a lot of passion. And I think, again, back to the piece of now we know better. We might not have known then, but we know now. And so now we have a responsibility to keep moving this work forward and not be complacent and not just stop where we're at, because there is so much more work to be done. But truly, it has been an honor. I have learned from each and every one of y'all. And I just have to say that in terms of our task force, we kept things excited and exciting, and definitely wanting us to come back for more. And I appreciate each and every one of y'all, as well as the larger task force members.
Time for perhaps one more share.
Michael, if I may. So I just want to begin by thanking our wonderful chairs, Attorney General Stein and Justice Earls, and of course my work group 3 chair, Representative Marcia Moore. It's been a pleasure working with her and the rest of our wonderful group. You're seeing me not at my desk today because I've been at the courthouse earlier today, seeing the consequences of our failure in our justice system. Quickly ran into my car to join you all for this wonderful meeting today. And I can tell you this work is necessary now more than ever. I'm excited about these recommendations. It's great to see such broad consensus support for each and every one of them. Excited to work with Representative Morey, and most importantly, each and every one of you as we get back to the next session of the North Carolina General Assembly to bring a lot of these recommendations to fruition. I think many of you remember when we first started this task force meeting, I had said, we can't afford to hear anymore that I can't breathe. I'm about to die. I need help. We've seen the failures of so many young people, like Tally talked about, being pushed out of our classrooms into jail cells. so many young men and women that are looking for second opportunities, and they find more and more impression instead. This is a real golden opportunity for us to take these amazing recommendations and to be able to change the trajectory of our state and country for so many people that are in need. So I'm hopeful that each of you will join Representative Morey and I in the halls and the committee rooms of the North Carolina General Assembly and push our fellow legislators to pick up a lot of these recommendations and make them a reality for so many North Carolinians. So thank you to each and every one of you from the bottom of my heart and so many of the clients and constituents that I represent every single day. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Muhammad. Anyone else before
Mike?
Sheriff Clemens.
Yeah. Good afternoon to everyone. The one thing that I said when we first got started was that I did not want to be a part of or see another task group that has just been pulled together just for name to make recommendations that fall silent. And I see that this group here has been awesome in not only with their passion, their enthusiasm, their commitment, but their perseverance, making sure that we get to where we are. We found out from whence we came to where now we need to go. Although I, along with other colleagues here and other members, did not agree with everything and every recommendation that we put forward, but the ultimate goal is to bring those recommendations together. I was told by an old man one time, he says, if everyone agrees on the same subject, either it's perfect or only one person is doing the thinking. Well, we can throw both of those out of this particular group because it's not perfect. Not one person is doing the thinking. Everyone is putting their passion forward. Everyone's putting their knowledge base forward. And I think Billy said something that was really important. We're talking about all the victims, whether they are a victim of a crime or whether they're a victim of racism or whether they're a victim of the system. The education piece is most important because we're going to have to prepare and repair the whole person and not just part of this person or part of that person. There's a big task that we have. But at the end of the day, I would like to see solutions. Recommendations are great. We all can make recommendations, but we have to persevere through this. We have to make sure that we follow through, stay on top of it, push, borrow, beg, whatever we have to do to make the scream, holler, cry, whatever we have to do to make sure that we get solutions for people, because over the years, this country has had a history of task forces. They've had a history of recommendations, but we've never seemed to be able to cross that threshold to come up with solutions that are going to better protect the people, better serve the people, and create a better society for all of us. And I thank each and every person that has been a part of this. I take away something after every meeting as a checklist to make sure, James Clemens, what are you doing as the sheriff to make law enforcement better? What are you doing to make your community better and safer? So I thank you all for my opportunity, for my report card, and for my checklist that I can check off every single day. And to our leadership, Justice Earls, Attorney General Stein, and my good friend Eric, listen, you guys have been awesome. The staff has been awesome. It's just been a great opportunity, and I look forward to going to the next quarter. This game never ends, so we got to continue to push. And if anybody falls from the wayside, let's pick them up. And you know what? Every now and then, you got to recruit new members if you're trying to win a championship, and we're in it to win it. Thank you, guys.
Mike Hawkins has one comment.
And go ahead. Yeah, Michael, just real briefly, as a proud member of Work Group 4, I'll step up, speak up for Work Group 4, and the work that Henderson did as the leader was just amazing. Listening to all these folks talk today, it struck me how many people have talked about how much they've learned during the process. And that's interesting because everybody who's on this task force was put on this task force because they have a particular expertise in a particular area. And yet, despite that, everybody's talking about how much they've learned at every meeting. And I think that's a testament to the strength of the force, the strength of the leadership with Justice Earls and Attorney General Stein, and also all of the group leaders and the people within the task force willing to have those conversations. Justice Earls at the beginning talked about what does the vote mean, and I would just conclude by saying, as an elected official, I've always thought that if I believed in the process, if I thought the process was sound, and the people involved in coming up with ideas operated in good faith and listened to each other, then I was good with the outcome, because I believe that it was the result of a diverse group of people who have different opinions, and it's rarely going to come out exactly 100% the way your personal opinion is. But if the process is good, then I can support the outcome. And that's what I think about this report is I may not agree with every detail, but I will go to the mat about the process and about the leadership and about the quality of people on this task force. And so that is my big takeaway. It's been a privilege to serve. So thank you, Michael.
Now, I'll just like to jump in right quick, Michael. I want to thank every task member that's on this group, but particularly I want to give an exceptional thank you to the staff leads and the staff working groups. I've looked through the SharePoint documents, and it is exceptional amount of information in those documents. And I know it took hours of studying the particular documents to put in there so we can study and make concrete recommendations based off of those. So I want to give a handout to the staff and the staff lead. Y'all was exceptional, and I thank you for every part of the process and that you have played in these recommendations as well. I also like to say, a lot of people say they want to see racial equity or equity across the board, but when it's time to stand up, they sit down. Those of us on this task force have stood up, but now we have a more important job of now running once we have stood up, meaning implementing these recommendations. Though we may not have agreed on every aspect of these recommendations, and as Henderson here would say, the devil's in the details. We know that the devil's in some of those details, and so we still have some things that we may have to work out. But I'm committed, and I know that everybody on this task force is committed, and it's been an honor and a pleasure working with you, especially speaking up for the community, because the tireless hours that I put into it is because they've been on my back about these recommendations and about everything in them. And I'm just honored to be able to serve with you all on this task force. And I look forward to the great work that I know we'll continue to do, because we're going to continue to run. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you all so much. Before I turn it over to Attorney General Stein and to talk about next steps, I just want to remind us that the things that you all have shared, we're seeking redemption and restoration, we seek reciprocity. In order for us to move towards that future, that next phase, we need humility, partnerships, understand that we are all interconnected, and that even though it's a lot, when we share or give of our time, our resources, and our energy and expertise, we gain relationships, perspective, knowledge, and a network of support for the way forward. So thank you all for what you have done to move us forward in North Carolina. So with that, I'll turn it over to Attorney General Stein for next steps.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that. What a absolutely inspiring 15, 20 minutes. Thank you all. Jasmine and I texted about how we were so moved by what y'all were saying throughout this process. So just know how grateful I am. And Helika, you asked to meet for another 2 years. I've got some great news for you, because we are going to be meeting for another 2 years. I heard Tally and Sergeant Garton and Mayor Colvin express their eagerness to keep at this important work. Senator Mohammed urged us to go to the legislature to help him and Representative Maury get some of these proposals that require legislative approval enacted. And so what I want to do right now is talk about what our next steps are, so you all have an understanding of what to look forward to in the coming couple weeks, and then moving into 2021. So just to be clear, the Governor's Executive Order 145 has our continued existence through the end of 2022, December 2022, so 2 years from now. So our primary objective over the next 2 years is to try to implement all of these great ideas that we've collectively generated. It does not mean we can't consider new ideas as new issues arise, and we will have a process to do that. But our primary objective is one of implementation. And we are going to be reaching out to you all on Monday, December 21st. You're going to get a survey that identifies a new committee structure. So we're going to get rid of our original 4 working groups and come up with some new ones. And you are to respond, please, by Monday, January 4th, with your preference for which subcommittee you would like to serve on the implementation front. And then we will put together a draft for you all for your consideration. We will meet next as a full task force on Friday, March 6th. So go ahead and block that out on your calendars, Friday, March 6th. But we will begin meeting in January and February as subcommittees to begin the process of strategizing on how we implement these ideas that we have collectively created. So the work continues, as the governor said at the very beginning. The pursuit for equal justice under law never ends. So our work must continue. I hope that you all feel the same degree of pride that I do in the incredible product that you've created and the determination to try to realize those recommendations into actual operation, and so that we can change our criminal justice system for the better so that everyone is treated fairly and equally. And with that, I will hand it back to my co-chair, Justice Earls.
Thank you, Attorney General Stein. And let me just say what an incredible pleasure and honor it's been to serve with you as co-chair so far. And of course, I look forward to all the work we have going ahead. So just to wrap up, it is important. I want to thank our facilitators. They have done a lot of work behind the scenes as well as on camera, if you will, but we're grateful to them for the assistance they provided in helping us helping us devise a process that allows for everyone's input, and their wisdom and skills has truly been tremendous. So thank you. I also need to, with regret, let you all know that Chief Letney is the only task force member who won't be continuing on with us because he has taken a new position in a different state. Chief Letney, I understand you are moving to South Carolina, and so I can't express enough how much I appreciate the input that you have had throughout this process. Your perspectives have been invaluable, and you've always been so willing to tell us what you honestly think about something and listen to us. That's just been tremendous, and what a great contribution you've made to our work so far. So with our great thanks, we're sorry you won't be with us going forward.
Well, thank you. As I said, I've really enjoyed the opportunity. I'll be moving to Georgia in January.
Georgia.
I will still be involved in law enforcement. I'll be chief of an agency there after retiring here in North Carolina. But I also, as I think most of you know, I'm on the board of the International Association of Chiefs of Police. And my service there will continue for many more years. So I bring this perspective to that audience and that platform. And I think not only that will that help me in my new role for the next few years, but certainly as I try to help shape law enforcement through IACP, and I will certainly continue to be involved in North Carolina. I'll still be involved in North Carolina Chiefs Association and be back to visit. And who knows, when I actually retire, I may be back. So a part of us will always be here in North Carolina. We've enjoyed not only all that the opportunities have had for employment, but also to live and to raise our kids, and it's just been a great state, and this is a part of our great experience. So thank you all.
Thank you. So I know that once there will be and I don't think we've mentioned this so far, we are planning to have a press conference on a virtual press conference on Monday, December 14th at 2 p.m. to publicly release the report and announce the report and to answer any questions. You all are welcome and encouraged to join us and to participate during the question and answer period. So we hope you can, that time will work for you, December 14th at 2 p.m. I know from already talking somewhat publicly about our work, and I'm sure many of you who have done that know as well, that there will be criticism from all sorts of sides and on all sorts of bases. Were we representative enough? Is any of this actually, can any of it be implemented? Did we go far enough? Are we going to really accomplish anything? And what I think is that we have established a firm foundation to work going forward, and that we just have to keep our eyes on the prize. So in that light, I ask you to think about, as you think about the questions we're asking you to answer over the next few weeks, how should we be reorganized, and where do you want to fit in the work? I ask you to think about a couple of things. I was really glad to hear the suggestion that there be a communication strategy, because as Chief Davis has told us many times, culture eats policy for lunch. And our recommendations don't necessarily address the cultural change that needs to happen to foster these policy changes. So I think we want to think broadly about what we can do to achieve implementation. But I also ask you to think about, of all the things you've learned, of all the things you've heard, all the things you've voted on, all the things you've thought about, before we get to the point of thinking what's actually doable, think about, what do you consider would have the biggest impact? Because those two things may not be the same, but if over the next couple of weeks, we will start to prioritize. And some of the considerations that go into prioritizing will be, what can we get done? But I think we always have to also undertake our prioritizing with that other perspective of what's going to have the biggest impact, what's going to make the most difference. And so I would love people's feedback. I've already started asking staff, and it's really fascinating to get their responses. If you want to just email me with your thoughts, I would love that. Of all, this is over 100-page report with tons of ideas and recommendations, but what are the things that are really going to make a difference? If you have thoughts about that, share them. And hopefully together we can begin to prioritize and begin the next stage of our work. So with that, I will, unless anyone has anything else I've forgotten, I don't see anyone waving at me, so I will conclude this meeting, and thank you all so much for the incredible work that we've done so far. Thank you.
Thank you all.